Okay, we're live.
Bismillah.
Oh, I think Sheikh has just left by mistake. So, in the name of Allah, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Wassalatu Wassalamu ala Rasulillah. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, Most Merciful, may peace and salutations be showered upon the Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Our Sheikh is back. I was just going to introduce the topic of the talk, but you're back. تفضلوا مشكورا.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على محمد رسول الله سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام الأنبياء والمرسلين والشافع المشفع يوم الدين وعلى آله الطيبين وأزواجه الطاهرات أمهات المؤمنين وصحابته الغر الميامين ومن استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله أيها الإخوة والأخوات إلى هذا اللقاء الخاص الذي نسلط الضوء فيه على آية من كتاب الله عز وجل جدير بالمسلم فهمها واستيعاب معانيها، ألا وهي الآية 22 من سورة الأنفال من قول الله عز وجل: إن شر الدواب عند الله الصم البكم الذين لا يعقلون. نعم.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, Merciful, and may peace and salutations be showered upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Indeed, all praises are due to Allah, and may the most complete salutations be showered upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and upon his family and his pure wives, and those who follow them until the day of resurrection. I welcome you all, my brothers and sisters, to this special sitting and special gathering that we have tonight that's dedicated to the correct understanding of a verse of the Quran. And it's a verse of the Quran that is worthy for the Muslim to pay attention to. It's worthy for the Muslim to understand it in its correct way. And it's the verse from Surah Al-Anfal, verse number 22, where Allah the Most High says that which means, indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, i.e. those who cannot hear and those who cannot speak, who do not use reason. So again, the verse, indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, who do not use reason. So this is what we're going to explain today.
الله عز وجل في كتابه العزيز ذكر أصحاب الأعذار وعذرهم. سنذكرهم أولا كما ذكروا في القرآن وفي السنة، ثم نعرج على فئة الصم، لأننا نتحدث إلى إخواننا من فاقدي السمع والقدرة على الكلام، ونبين ما يتعلق بذلك.
So Allah the Most High, He has mentioned in the Quran the excuses or the deficiencies that people have, and this is something that we'll explain in properness and in detail to our listeners, and with a special emphasis upon our brothers and sisters who are deaf.
أولا ذكر الله عز وجل إعذاره لفئات من بني آدم، فأعذرهم في عدم الإتيان بما يجب على غيرهم من القادرين.
So firstly, Allah the Most High, He has mentioned His excusing of the people who have deficiencies or inabilities or disabilities, And he has mentioned his excuse of them, where they cannot offer that which those who do not have those deficiencies or disabilities. So Allah mentions the pardoning that he gives to people who have disabilities, where they cannot perform duties like the people who have ability can, or who do not have ability can.
في الآية 91 من سورة التوبة يقول الله عز وجل: ليس على الضعفاء ولا على المرضى ولا على الذين لا يجدون ما ينفقون حرج إذا نصحوا لله ورسوله ما على المحسنين من سبيل والله غفور رحيم. نعم.
And from the places in the Quran where Allah the Most High mentions the excuse and the pardon that he gives those who are unable, is the 91st verse in the chapter of repentance in the Quran, where Allah the Most High says that which means there is not upon the weak or upon the ill or upon those who do not find anything to spend any discomfort, where they are sincere to Allah and His Messenger. There is not upon the doers of good any cause for blame, and Allah is forgiving and merciful.
الله عز وجل أعذر هؤلاء الثلاثة، الضعيف والمريض والفقير، أعذرهم لهذا العجز الحاصل عندهم، فالله عز وجل لا يكلف نفسا إلا وسعها كما قال في آية البقرة.
So in this verse, Allah the Most High, He explains and He makes it clear that He pardons these three types of people: the weak, or the ill, or those who are poor and do not find anything to spend. Allah the Most High, He makes explicit within this verse that they are pardoned, as He has mentioned in the Quran, that He burdens the soul not more than it can bear.
وهنا أيضا نجد أن الله عز وجل أعذر طائفة أخرى من ذوي العجز، والعجز أنواع، العجز أقسام، فالله عز وجل أعذر طائفة من ذوي العجز وهم فاقدي البصر، وكذلك الذين لا يقوون على الجري لعرج أو مرض. قال تعالى في سورة النور في الآية 61: ليس على الأعمى ولا على الأعرج ليس على الأعمى حرج ولا على الأعرج حرج ولا على المريض حرج. فبين أن هؤلاء الثلاثة عندهم نوع عجز: أعمى لا يرى فلا يستطيع القتال، أعرج لا يستطيع الجري لأن القتال يحتاج إلى كر وفر، ومريض لا يقوى على السفر والقتال بسبب أنه مريض، فالله أعذرهم قال ليس عليهم حرج.
And there is another type of people who have a kind of special dispensation or a special allowance where Allah the Most High has pardoned them, and they are the people who are blind, and also the people who cannot run, i.e. they are infirm or they are unable to move and they have poor mobility. And Allah the Most High, He pardons them in the chapter of the Quran, the chapter of the light, where, and it's verse number 61, where Allah the Most High says that which means there is not upon the blind any harm or any constraint or any blame. You could translate it as any of these, nor upon the person who is lame any constraint or harm or blame, nor upon the ill is there any blame. So here Allah the Most High, He says about these three types of individuals: the blind, those who have mobility issues, or the people who are sick Allah the Most High says that there is no blame upon them if they do not fight in the way of Allah, because they have an excuse not to do so.
هؤلاء الثلاثة الذين ذكرهم الله في الآية 61 من سورة النور، وأنه لا حرج عليهم في ترك القتال مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، في سورة الفتح في الآية 17 ذكر الله عز وجل أنهم لو أطاعوا الله ورسوله يدخلهم جنات. قال تعالى: ليس على الأعمى حرج ولا على الأعرج حرج ولا على المريض حرج ومن يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومن يتولى يعذبه عذابا أليما. من يتولى عن الإيمان ويعرض عن الإيمان فإن عجزه لا يعذره، لأنه يعذر بقدر العجز الذي عنده. فالأعرج لا يعذر بالكفر، والأعمى لا يعذر بالكفر، والمريض لا يعذر بالكفر، لكن فاقد العقل يعذر. نعم.
So these three groups, there is no harm upon them. And this is similar to what Allah the Most High says in the chapter of the victory, where he excused them for leaving off fighting with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And that's where Allah the Most High said, that which means there is not upon the blind any guilt, nor upon the lame any guilt, nor upon the ill any guilt, i.e. no guilt for remaining behind and not participating in the battles. And then Allah the Most High goes on to say, and whosoever obeys Allah and his messenger, Allah will admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow. But whoever turns away, Allah will punish them with a painful punishment. So despite the fact that these three things are excuses and legitimate reasons for not participating in the battles, the individual who turns away and disbelieves, this is not a legitimate excuse.
الآن رأينا أن الله أعذر الأعمى، ونأخذ الأعمى كمثال. الله أعذر الأعمى في هذه الآيات من أمر لا يقدر عليه، وهو القتال والمشاركة لفقده البصر. طيب، لكن هل هذا فيه ذم للأعمى؟ لا، بل إن الله عز وجل كرمه بذلك، فحفظ له إن هو آمن، حفظ له حقه في دخول الجنة وإن لم يقاتل مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، ذلك لأنه معذور بعجزه.
So we will take here the blind person as an example. Allah the Most High has excused him from performing a duty that he is not able to do, or she is not able to, he or they are not able to do, due to them not having sight, and that is that they are excused from fighting in the way of Allah. And within this excuse for them not to participate, this isn't a sensory blame of them, or it's not a means of demeaning them in any way. Rather, it is a preservation of them, and rather Allah the Most High, due to the fact that they cannot do it, Allah preserves their right and Allah preserves their reward with paradise. So these people are excused and they have the reward that Allah the Most High has promised them.
إذا علم هذا، نأتي الآن إلى الآيات التي ذكر فيها الأعمى، وقد يظن أن هذه الآيات فيها استنقاص للأعمى، وليس الأمر كذلك.
So if we use this as a starting point, we can then go back and reference the verse that we mentioned at the beginning, and look to see, and this is a verse where it could be understood potentially that there is a blame or there is a deficiency attached to the blind people, etc. but we'll look at it now on the basis of this, and we'll see the correct understanding of the verse.
في سورة الأنعام في الآية 50 ذكر الله عز وجل الأعمى فقال سبحانه وتعالى: قل لا أقول لكم عندي خزائن الله ولا أعلم الغيب ولا أقول لكم إني ملك إن أتبع إلا ما يوحى إلي قل هل يستوي الأعمى والبصير أفلا تتفكرون. هنا جاء ذكر الأعمى لا على سبيل المذمة ولكن على سبيل بيان الأثر. هل الأعمى والبصير يستويان في العمل الذي يقومان به في الدنيا؟ مؤكد أنهما لا يستويان. فالأعمى هو من ذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة، فلذلك هو يعذر في أمور كثيرة حتى عند غير المسلمين. يعذر فيما لا يعذر فيه البصير، لأن البصير يرى وهذا لا يرى. فلذلك ضرب الله بالأعمى والبصير مثلا للذي يستعمل بصيرة القلب لمعرفة الحق من الذي يعطلها ويعرض عن معرفة الحق، لأن معرفة الحق ليست تعرف بالأبصار التي في الرؤوس، وإنما تعرف بالبصيرة التي في القلب. لذلك قال الله عز وجل: إنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. ومعلوم أن العمى هو من الأمراض التي تصيب العين لا القلب، لكن هذا العمى يحول دون إدراك المرئيات، أما عمى القلب فيحول دون إدراك المعقولات، فيصبح أعمى القلب أعمى البصيرة كالمجنون، لا يميز بين الخير والشر والنافع والضار. نعم.
And Allah the Most High, He mentions the blind person in the chapter of Al-Anfal, and it's
الأنعام.
Afwan, An'am. Athabakum Allah Shaykhana. And it's Al-An'am, the cattle, and it's verse number 50, where Allah the Most High says that, which means, say, O Muhammad, I do not tell you that I have the depositories containing Allah's provision, nor that I know the unseen, nor do I tell you that I am an angel. I only follow what is revealed unto me. Say, is the blind equivalent to the seeing? Will you not then give thought? So here, Allah the Most High, He mentions the blind, and this isn't a condescension, or this isn't a looking down upon the blind. Rather, it is showing and it's striking a similitude of whether the blind and those who see are equal, and whether they are equal in the life of this world. And it's with no doubt that the person who is blind has specific and special needs that need to be attended to. And due to these needs, they have a concession, or they are treated in a different way to those who have sight. And this is even with the non-Muslims. This is a general thing in the dunya, in the life of this world. So here, Allah the Most High, He strikes a resemblance, or metaphorical, well, I shouldn't say metaphorical, He strikes an example between, an analogy between those who use their hearts to measure the truth and those who do not. And He gives an example of those who do this against the people who can see and the people who cannot see. And this is because knowledge of the truth and actually seeing what is true, or perceiving what is true, the organ that is used to do this is the heart that is within the chest, and it's not the eye that is within the head. Rather, the eye, it captures that which is visually present, whereas the heart it captures the truth and the essence of what is happening and the essence of life. And for this reason, Allah the Most High said, indeed, it does not affect the eyes, rather it affects the hearts that are within the chests. And this is because the individual, they use the heart to distinguish the truth. And for this reason, the individual who is blind with their heart, they are like an animal because they do not see and they cannot perceive the truth and the reality behind the world, even if visually they can perceive what is in front of them in the world.
وما يبين هذا أيضا ما جاء في سورة غافر في الآية 58. يقول الله عز وجل: وما يستوي الأعمى والبصير. إذن هم لا يستويان. بماذا؟ في أثر الدنيا. فهذا يستطيع أن يقود السيارة الذي هو بصير، والأعمى لا يستطيع أن يقود السيارة. هل إذا منع من قيادة السيارة يقال أنه ظلم؟ هذا لا يقوله عاقل. لذلك في نفس الآية قال الله عز وجل: وما يستوي الأعمى والبصير. هذا مثل مما تدركه عقول الناس. كل الناس مجمعة أن الأعمى والبصير لا يستويان في كل شيء. فهذا يستطيع أن يقوم بأعمال لا يستطيع أن يقوم بها أخوه الأعمى. لكن المقصود من إيراد هذه الأمثلة هو إدراك العقول لحقيقة الأمر، وهو ما يتعلق بالإيمان. لذلك في نفس الآية قال تعالى: وما يستوي الأعمى والبصير والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ولا المسيء قليلا ما تتذكرون. يعني أن الله ضرب المثل المحسوس المعروف عند كل البشر، وهو فاقد البصر ومن كان مبصرا. أنتم جميعا لا تعاملونهم في كل شيء بالسواء، فهذا تكلفونه المبصر بأعمال صعبة لأنه يرى، وذاك ترفقون به لأنه لا يرى. وكذلك الله عز وجل مع الذين يستعملون بصيرة قلوبهم والذين يعطلون. ولهذا قال: والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات هؤلاء كالمبصر، وإن كان بعضهم عميان لكنهم كالمبصرين الذين يدركون المرئيات بأعينهم. هؤلاء يدركون حقيقة الإيمان بقلوبهم، لذلك هم مؤمنون. ولا المسيء، قال: والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ولا المسيء، يعني لا يستويان. هؤلاء لا يستوي، كما أن الأعمى لا يستوي مع البصير في كل شيء في قدراته، فكذلك المؤمن والكافر لا يستويان. فالكافر عطل بصيرة قلبه، والمؤمن استعملها. وقد يكون الكافر مبصر والمؤمن فاقد البصر. نعم.
In addition to this, Allah the Most High, He mentions the blind and those who can see, and He juxtaposes them in the verse of the Quran, or in the chapter of the Quran, the Al-Ghafir, the one who forgives, and it is verse number 58, where Allah the Most High says that which means, and the blind and the seeing are not equal, they are not the same. And this is something that is, it's an analogy that Allah the Most High uses. And this is something that really the people have no difference of opinion upon. So if we take the example in the worldly life of driving a car, so the rights that someone who has good vision and can see are different to the rights of the individual who is blind. And the people, everyone is in consensus over this, that they are not equal in this sense. So one is charged or is able to do things that the other is not. So they are treated differently. They're not equal. Then Allah the Most High goes on to say, nor are equal those who believe and those who do righteous deeds and the evildoer. So here, Allah the Most High, in this analogy, He has used the blind as an analogy for those who are evildoers. And He has used the seeing as an analogy for those who do righteous deeds, who believe and do righteous deeds. And that's because the people who believe and do righteous deeds, they use their hearts to recognize faith and to actualize faith. Whereas those who are evildoers, they do not use their hearts to actualize faith, and they do not use their hearts to perceive the true nature of faith. So in this way, the believer and the non-believer, they are not equal and they are not the same. And this is in relation to their hearts, because the believers, they perceive and they can see with their hearts, whereas the disbelievers, they cannot. And this is irrespective of whether they can actually see or not, because the believers, they might not be able to see with their eyes, yet their hearts are perceptive and they can see and they have insight with their hearts. And the opposite is true, i.e. those who disbelieve, maybe they can see with their eyes and they can perceive visually, but their hearts are sealed and their hearts are blind.
نعم. وقد بين الله عز وجل ذلك جليا في الأمثال الكثيرة التي ضربها في القرآن. فقد ضرب الله عز وجل الأمثلة بالسيل وما يحمل من الزبد، والشجرة عن الشجرة المثمرة عن كلمة التوحيد، وأيضا فاقدي بعض الحواس، كما قال الله عز وجل في سورة النحل في الآية 76، قال وضرب الله مثلا رجلين أحدهما أبكم لا يتكلم لا يقدر على شيء. والأبكم عادة في العادة ليس دائما، لكن أغلب الأحيان أن الإنسان إذا فقد النطق فقد السمع معه. وضرب الله مثلا رجلين أحدهما أبكم لا يقدر على شيء، يعني لا يستطيع الكلام فيبين ما في نفسه عما في نفسه، وهو كل على مولاه، لأنه يعني لا يستطيع أن يتكلم، فهو لا ينفع مولاه بشيء. وأينما يوجهه لا يأتي بخير، يرسله فيذهب لا يستطيع أن يتكلم فيخبر عما أرسل به من أمر. قال هل يستوي هو ومن يأمر، يعني يتكلم يأمر بالعدل وهو على صراط مستقيم؟ هنا ليسوا سواء، هذا عنده قدرات محدودة وهذا عنده قدرات أكثر، فليسوا سواء. وليس الأمر هنا للاستنقاص، ولكنه لبيان الأثر الدنيوي لا الأثر الأخروي. نعم.
And there are many examples in the Quran where Allah the Most High, He explains the reality of affairs to us. There are many analogies that He uses. For example, He uses the example of flowing torrents and the scum that is upon them and the dirt that is upon them. He uses the example of a tree that bears fruit and the one that does not bear fruit. And He also mentions the Most High in the chapter of the bee, and this is verse number 76. He mentions another parable where He says, and Allah presents the example of two men. One of them is unable to speak, i.e., what used to be called dumb, or maybe mute. So someone who is unable to speak, and it's usually the case, and not always the case, but if someone is unable to speak, that they they are often deaf as well. But Allah mentions and Allah presents the example of two men, one of them who cannot speak and unable to do a thing, while he is a burden to his guardian. Wherever he directs him, he brings no good. Is he equal to one who commands justice while they are on, or while he is on a straight path? So it is not equal. They are not equal. The one who cannot speak and cannot command good is not like the one who can speak and can command good. There are differences between them. And this isn't a difference to denigrate one and to shame one. Rather, this is an example and a parable that Allah brings from the life of this world to draw a parallel to the state of affairs and the people in the hereafter.
وأيضا من الأمثلة التي ضربها الله عز وجل في باب فقدان السمع والكلام، لأن من المعلوم أن فقدان البصر ليس كفقدان السمع والكلام، فإن فاقد البصر يستطيع أن يسمع ويتكلم، يسمع الخطاب ويرد الجواب. أما فاقد السمع والنطق وإن كان يرى فهو سينظر إليك وشفاتك تتحرك، لكن لا يسمع خطابك ولا يرد بما يلائم كلامك، لأنه لا يستطيع أن يرد أصلا بالنطق. فالله عز وجل جعل الأمثلة على هذا القياس، لا على أساس المفاضلة في عين الله، في نظر الله عز وجل، ولكن على أساس المفاضلة في الدنيا بين الناس. فإن الناس يفاضلون، مثلا لو أنك صاحب شركة وهذه الشركة تقدم عروض للعملاء، فهل ستقبل أن توظف أصما؟ كيف سيعرض على الناس منتجاتك؟ أو لنفرض أنه ليس بأصم، لكنك مثلا في لندن وتأتي برجل من بلد آخر، مثلا من شرق آسيا أو من أفريقيا، وهو لا يعرف من الإنجليزية حرفا واحدا، ثم تريد منه أن يعمل في مجال عرض المنتجات للناس وتبيينها لهم، فإن هذا لا يصلح لهذا العمل، وهذا ليس من باب استنقاصه. كونك لا تعينه في هذا العمل لا يعني أنك تنتقصه، لكن يعني أنه غير قادر على القيام بهذا العمل، لا غير، ليس أكثر من ذلك. نعم.
And from what's known and what we can perceive is that the people who cannot see, they are able to do things that the people who cannot hear can do, because it's often the case that they can hear and they're able to speak and they're able to understand and make themselves understood. Whereas the people who cannot hear, then it's more difficult because they have to lip read and there are more barriers there for them presenting their ideas and communicating with others. And Allah the Most High, He chooses the parables appropriately within the Quran to show these different levels of these people. And this isn't to show that some are better than others, or to denigrate some over others, or to mock some of them over others. Rather, it is a parable and it's an example to show that the basis, or to show that as some are advantaged over others in the dunya, then similar is the case, or to show that they have different strengths. Just as they have different strengths in the dunya, that in the life of this world, that the parable fits that. So it may be that they have different strengths in the hereafter, or they're able to do things, or they are good in a way in relates to their faith or the hereafter. And an example of this could be that if an individual has a company or has some work in London, for example, and they need someone who's able to run the company and manage and direct the company. They wouldn't hire someone who's from the Middle East, who cannot speak the language, who cannot make themselves understood in English and cannot get the job done in English. And this isn't a discriminatory act where they're not employing the individual simply because they do not know English, but rather this work that they are needed for, it's essential for them to be able to speak in English in order to get the job done. So likewise, when we see these parables and these analogies being given in the Quran, then they are not a means of mocking and are not a means of demeaning people who are like that.
وليتبين الأمر لننظر إلى هذه الآية من سورة البقرة حيث ذكر الله عز وجل الصم. قال تعالى عن الكافرين: أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين. الآيات من الآية 16 من سورة البقرة. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم أي ببصرهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. الآن هذا مثل يضربه الله عز وجل لمن آتاه الله نعمة الإبصار ونعمة السمع ونعمة النطق والعقل، لكنه عطلها عن الغرض الذي لأجله خلقت، فهي خلقت لتهديه إلى ما ينجيه من عذاب السعير، لكنه عطلها. ولذلك قال الله عز وجل عنه في الآية التالية: صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون. ليس حقيقة أنهم فاقدوا هذه الحواس، وإلا عندنا في شرعنا أن الإنسان إذا ولد أعمى أصم أبكم فإنه لا يؤاخذ بما يفعله، ولا يعني لا يؤاخذ في الدنيا بما يفعله، ولا يؤاخذ يوم القيامة بتقصيره أو بفعله المنكرات، وإنما يوم القيامة يعاد له بصره وسمعه ونطقه ويختبر في ذلك اليوم على الإيمان. إذن هذه النصوص ليست تتناول حقيقة من كانوا صما فاقدي السمع أو بكما فاقدي النطق، وإنما هي أمثلة تضرب لمن عطل هذه الحواس وهي معه، عطلها عن عملها الصحيح الأصلي الذي خلقت له، وهو الاهتداء إلى مراد الله عز وجل.
And we can look at another example of this, and this is in the chapter of the cow, the second verse in the Quran, and it's verse number 16, where Allah the Most High says, their example is that of one who kindled a fire, but when it illuminated what was around them, Allah took away their light and left them in darkness, so they could not see. So here, Allah the Most High is giving an example and a parable of those who are able-bodied and have all of their sensory perceptions and who are able, but they use these blessings that Allah, or misuse is a better expression, they misuse these senses that they have, such that these senses do not direct them to the worship of Allah alone. Rather, they misuse them and they do not worship Allah. And for this reason, Allah the Most High says in the next verse, referring to them, that they are deaf, dumb, and blind. so they will not return to the right path. So here, this does not mean that they are actually physically not able to perceive sight, not able to perceive sound, and not able to communicate with their tongues. Rather, this is a parable, and it's likening them to the people who cannot perceive in these ways or express themselves in these ways. It's a parable for them because they are not using their senses to guide them to faith. As for those people who are born like this, without any sensory perceptions, and who cannot hear, they cannot see, they cannot speak, etc., these people are not taken to account in the life of this world. This is the ruling of Al-Islam as relates to them. They are not taken into account for their actions in this world. In the hereafter, they will be given by Allah's will their sensory perceptions, and they will be tested accordingly. And if they're successful, they'll be from the people of the paradise, and if they are not, they'll be from the people of the fire. This is the meaning of what the Shaykh said. So here in this verse, Allah the Most High gives examples of those who misuse their senses and do not use them to guide them to Allah the Most High.
ومما يبين ذلك أيضا من كتاب ربنا ما جاء في سورة البقرة بالآية 170 و171. يقول الله عز وجل عن الكفار: وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون ومثل الذين كفروا كمثل الذي ينعق بما لا يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء صم بكم عمي فهم لا يعقلون. هنا الله عز وجل يضرب المثل للكافر وليس يريد حقيقة العجز في هذه الحواس، ولكن الله عز وجل يقول هذا الذي أوتي البراهين والأدلة على الإيمان وهو يعرض عنها ويدعو غير الله إنما يصنع كالذي ينعق يرفع صوته كالغراب وهو لا يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء. ثم قال صم عن سماع الحق بكم عن النطق به عمي عن إدراكه بالأبصار. وكذلك جاء في سورة نوح قول الله عز وجل أنه يعني نوح دعا قومه كثيرا ولكنهم كانوا يصمون آذانهم عن سماع الحق وسنأتي عليه. نعم.
A further example we can see is in the same chapter of the Quran, the chapter of the cow, and that's verses 170 to 171, where Allah the Most High, He says that which means, and when it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say, rather, we will follow that which we found our fathers doing, even though their fathers understood not, nor were they guided. And then Allah the Most High says, the example of those who disbelieve is like that of one who shouts at what sorry, the translation's a bit funny here. The example of those who disbelieve is like that of one who shouts at what hears. Yes, the example of those who disbelieve is like that of one who shouts at what hears nothing, i.e., someone who shouts at someone who cannot hear, but calls and cries, deaf, dumb, and blind, so they do not understand. So here, Allah the Most High, in this example that He's giving, it's not an example that's It's an example of those who believe against those who disbelieve. This is an example of those who disbelieve. And it's not an actual description of the people who actually have these disabilities. Rather, those people who those people who have been given their senses, and again they do not use their senses to guide them. So it is as though they are deaf in that they cannot hear the truth. It is as though they are dumb because they cannot speak the truth or articulate what the truth is. And it is as though they are blind because their hearts cannot see, as we said before, and cannot perceive that which is true and that which is correct, due to the veil that Allah the Most High has put upon it, due to their not following their senses. And similarly, we see an example of this with the Prophet of Allah, Noah, may upon him be peace, where he called his people to the worship of Allah alone, but they responded in a way that it was as though they were deaf. They would not hear his call. And we will see this now.
في سورة نوح في الآية من الآية 5 إلى الآية 6 يقول الله عز وجل عن نوح أنه قال ربي إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا فلم يزدهم دعائي إلا فرارا وإني كلما دعوتهم لتغفر لهم جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا، أي أنهم عطلوا حاسة السمع بوضعهم الأصابع في الآذان، وعطلوا حاسة الإبصار بتغطية الوجوه حتى لا يروا نوح وهو يدعوهم. هؤلاء شبهوا بالصم وبالعمي، ولكن ليسوا حقيقة هم صم ولا عمي، وليس في الصمم والعمى الحقيقي مذمة، لكن في الصمم والبكم والعمى المجازي هنا يكون الذم، لأنه لا يطلق على الإنسان أنه أعمى أو أصم أو أبكم وهو عنده الحواس إلا إذا كان ممن عطلها عن إدراك الحق. نعم.
And we see this in the Quran, where Allah the Most High talks about his prophet Noah, upon him be peace, where it describes him calling to Allah, and he said in the chapter Noah, he said, "My Lord, indeed I invited my people to truth night and day, but my invitation, my calling to them, increased them not except in flight, i.e. in aversion." So he called the people and it just caused them to run away. And indeed, every time I invited them that you may forgive them, they put their fingers in their ears, covered themselves with their garments, persisted, and were arrogant with great arrogance. So what the people of Noah did was they put their fingers in their ears. So they willingly made themselves blind, made themselves deaf, and they covered their eyes with their garments. So willingly made themselves blind, so they could not hear the guidance that Noah was calling them to. They could not see the goodness that he was calling them to. So for this reason, they were likened to the deaf and the blind. And this is not to say that they actually were, but rather again, because they did not use their sensory perceptions as Allah the Most High intended them to. They were likened to those who were deaf and blind. And again, this doesn't contain a mockery or a demeaning of those who have actual physical disabilities of being deaf and actually of being blind.
وفي سورة الفرقان في الآية 43 إلى 46 يقول الله عز وجل: أرأيت من اتخذ إلهه هواه أفأنت تكون عليه وكيلا أم تحسب أن أكثرهم يسمعون أو يعقلون؟ هل الآن المقصود يسمعون بآذانهم؟ لا، هم يسمعون بآذانهم، لكن يسمعون بمعنى يستجيبون، ولذلك قال أو يعقلون. هم ليسوا مجانين، لكنهم لم يستعملوا العقل استعمالا صحيحا. لذلك قال الله عز وجل إنهم كالأنعام، هم كالأنعام، كالحيوانات. لماذا؟ الحيوانات تسمع وترى، ولكن لا تعقل. فإذا أنت قلت للحيوان، ربما المدرب هذا يختلف، نحن نتكلم عن الحيوان في طبيعته. الحيوان في طبيعته لو أصدرت أي صوت فزع وهرب، لكن لو قلت له اذهب اذهب، هو لا يفهم ما معنى اذهب، لا يفهم ما معنى، هو يسمعك لكن لا يفهم ماذا تريد، بخلاف ما لو أصدرت صوتا عاليا مفزعا فإنه سيولي مدبرا هاربا. لذلك يقول الله عز وجل إنهم كالأنعام، ثم أكد فقال بل هم أضل. إذا ليس المقصود فقد السمع حقيقة، ولا فقد النطق حقيقة، ولا فقد البصر حقيقة، لأنه قال بل هم أضل من الأنعام. لماذا؟ لأنهم عندهم سمع وعندهم بصر وعندهم نطق وعندهم عقل، لكن عطلوا ذلك كله عن أن يصلوا به إلى الحق. نعم.
And Allah the Most High, He mentions in the chapter the criterion. He mentions a similar parable whereby He says that which means, or do you think that most of them hear or reason? They are not except like livestock, i.e. cattle. Rather, they are even more astray in their way. So here, it's a question of them being able to hear, or a question of them being able to reason. So it's negating the fact that those who believe perceive with their senses. So here, Allah the Most High gives their parable that they're like animals. So animals, for example, they can sense and they can perceive things. They can hear sounds and they can see. But for example, if you were to make any sound at them, any sudden sound, they would flee and run away. But if you were to say to them, go away, they wouldn't understand the actual words of what you're saying. And again, likewise, they cannot express what they are feeling or what emotions they are going through. So here, this isn't an actual negation of people being able to hear or have intellect, because Allah the Most High compares them to animals, animals who do have sensory perception. Rather, it's an example that, again, those people who do not use their hearing or use their intellect or use their sight to guide them to Allah, rather they are astray. Rather they are like livestock. But then the next verse emphasizes this and says, rather they are even more astray in their way than those livestock. So this is emphasis upon that, the fact that they do not use their perceptions and their senses in the correct way.
وفي سورة الأعراف في الآية 179 يبين الله عز وجل حقيقة الأمر بيانا شافيا كافيا لا مزيد بعده إلى إيضاح. يقول الله عز وجل ولقد ذرأنا لجهنم كثيرا من الجن والإنس، كثيرا من الجن والإنس. لماذا؟ قال لهم قلوب لا يعقلون بها، لهم قلوب لا يعقلون، يعني عطلوها عن عملها وهو الإدراك. ولهم أعين لا يبصرون بها، ليس لكونها عمياء فاقدة القدرة، لا، مدركة لكن لا يبصرون بها الحق، لا يريدون الوصول إلى الحق، ولهم آذان لا يسمعون بها، لا لكونهم صم، لا، ولكن لكونهم عطلوا هذه الحاسة عن إدراك الأمر الذي خلقوا له والذي ينفعهم. ثم قال تعالى: أولئك كالأنعام. لماذا؟ لأن الأنعام لهم قلوب لكن لا تدرك، لهم أعين لكن لا تبصر كما يبصر الإنسان. لا ترى مثلا بقرة رأت مثلا منظرا جميلا فجلست تتأمله، هذا لا يوجد. تمر البقرة من عند المنظر الجميل، وأيضا لو يعني رأت حادثا مروريا مروعا تقطعت فيه الأجساد أشلاء، فإن البقرة لن تقف، وإنما تنظر وتمشي لا تدري ما هذا. بينما الإنسان الذي يرى بعينه فإنه سيقف عند المنظر الجميل يتأمله ويتمتع به، وعند هذا المنظر الفظيع المفزع يتألم له. إذن البقرة عندها عينان وهذا الإنسان عنده عينان، لكن البقرة لم تستعمل عيناها في هذا الأمر الذي استعمل فيه الإنسان عيناه. إذن المقصود أن هؤلاء الناس عطلوا هذه الحواس عن الأمر الذي خلقت له، ولذلك سماهم الله في آخر الآية قال: أولئك هم الغافلون. هذه هي الحقيقة، أنهم غفلوا عن الحق، فلم يعودوا يستعملوا أبصارهم لإدراكه، ولا يستعملوا أسماعهم لإدراكه، ولا يستعملوا نطقهم يعني النطق به، وإنما جعلوا ذلك معطلا عن كل ما له خلق. ولهذا قال الله عز وجل عنه أنهم كالأنعام، ثم قال: بل هم أضل من الأنعام، لأن الأنعام لم تعطى الإدراك، وإن كان أعطيت البصر وأعطيت السمع لكن وأعطيت أيضا النطق، لكن لم تعطى الإدراك في النظر لترى كل شيء كما يراه من أعطي العقل وهو الإنسان، ولم تعطى الإدراك في السمع كما أعطيه من يعني الإنسان الذي يدرك بتمييز الأصوات صوتا عن صوت، وأعطيت النطق لكن لم تعطى الإدراك الذي أعطيه الإنسان الذي يستعمل النطق في التعبير عما في نفسه. فلذلك هم كالأنعام بل هم أضل، لا لكونهم صم ولا لكونهم حقيقة عمي أو بكم أو عرج، لا، لكن لكونهم غافلون عن الحق معرضون عنه. نعم.
We see another example of this in the chapter of the Quran, Al-A'raf, and it's verse number 179, where Allah the Most High says that which means, and we have certainly created for hell many of the jinn and mankind. They have hearts with which they do not understand. They have eyes with which they do not see. They have ears with which they do not hear. Those are like livestock, rather they are more astray. It is they who are the heedless. So here Allah the Most High, He gives a parable of them, of the people of the hellfire, that they have hearts that cannot see. And they have hearts which cannot understand. And this is not a literal case that they do not have hearts. They have eyes with which they do not see. And again, this is not a literal case that they have no eyes. And they have ears with which they do not hear. Again, it's not a literal fact that they have no ears. Rather, it's that they do not use these senses and these organs in the way in which Allah the Most High had intended. So while they may have hearts, they did not use them to understand. While they did have eyes, they did not use them to see and perceive what the truth was. And while they had ears, they did not use them to listen to the guidance. And this is, again, they are a similitude is struck between them and like animals. Again, because animals have hearts with which they cannot perceive. They have the ability to see, but they do not see in the same sense that a human does. So while a cow, for example, can perceive visually what is going on, a cow does not respond to that visual stimuli like a human would. So, for example, they wouldn't, if there is a beautiful scene or a beautiful sight, the cow doesn't pause for a moment to take in the sight and to appreciate the sight. Rather, it will carry about its business. And again, if there is a horrible sight, it does not look at it and ponder it or get afraid of it or get upset due to it. So this is like the people who do not use their senses in the correct way. And Allah the Most High says that they are like livestock, rather, they are more astray. And then he emphasizes this, that indeed they are the heedless. They are heedless because they, in actual fact, they have these senses, but they do not use these senses as was intended. And they do not use these senses to benefit them as Allah, as it had intended for them to benefit through them.
ولعلنا يعني في الختام نعرج على بعض الأمثلة التي تعامل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم معها. فهذا عبد الله بن أم مكتوم الأعمى، أنزل الله عز وجل قرآنا فيه يعاتب فيه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لإعراضه عنه حين جاء يسأل عن حاجة له يعني في الدين، يعني يتعلمها من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان مشغولا ببعض أولئك الذين هم كالأنعام، الذين لهم عيون لا يبصرون بها وأذان لا يسمعون بها وألسن لا ينطقون بها الحق وعقول وقلوب لا يعقلون بها. قال الله عز وجل: عبس وتولى أن جاءه الأعمى وما يدريك لعله يتزكى أو يذكر وتنفعه الذكرى. أما من استغنى، أي أولئك استغنوا عن معرفة الحق، لا يريدون معرفة الحق. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يبذل معهم وسعه، لأن الأعمى مسلم وسؤاله يمكن أن ينتظر كما قدره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. لكن الله عز وجل قدم هذا الأعمى على أولئك المبصرين ورفع شأنه. ولذلك كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد ذلك إذا خرج في سفر جعله على المدينة يؤم الناس في المسجد ويكون أميرا عليها. وأيضا جعله المؤذن الرئيسي لمسجده صلى الله عليه وسلم. ولهذا جاء في الحديث أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: لا يغرنكم أذان بلال فإنما يؤذن بليل، ولكن إذا أذن ابن أم مكتوم فأمسكوا، أي أمسكوا عن الأكل والشرب والجماع، لأنه يكون بدأ وقت الصيام. فجعله المؤتمن على هذه العبادة العظيمة وهي الإمساك وبدء الصيام، وهو رجل أعمى. فهذا من تقدير النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لهذا الرجل مع كونه أعمى. لماذا؟ لما وجد فيه من الإيمان والتقوى. وأيضا نرى من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مثلا آخر، لما قام عمرو بن الجموح وكان رجلا أعرج ومعذور عن القتال، فقال: والله لأطأن بعرجة هذه الجنة. فخرج يقاتل حتى قتل، فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إني رأيته يطأ بعرجته الجنة، تعظيما لشأنه وإكبارا له. فالإسلام أعظم دين أعطى لذوي الاحتياجات حقوقهم، بل أعطى لكل شيء حقه، لكل أحد ولكل شيء. فلذلك لا يصح أن يفهم القرآن بفهم مستقل عن أسباب نزوله وعن فهم من نزل فيهم القرآن، وإلا لم يدرك الناس حقيقة الرسالة. نعم، والله تعالى أعلم، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
And to close, we can give some examples of this from the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And from the examples that we can give of how people with special needs were treated at the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was the example of Abdullah ibn Maktoum, who was a blind man. And there was a point where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was calling those people who were obstinate, who weren't listening, who had hearts, as we have mentioned, and who had eyes, as we had mentioned, that weren't hearts that weren't perceptive and eyes that weren't seeing. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was busy calling those people to Islam. And this blind man, he went to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and tried to get his attention. But because the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, was busy, he did not respond to him. So Allah the Most High revealed the verse. He, i.e. the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, frowned and turned away. He turned away because there came to him the blind man interrupting. But what would make you perceive, O Muhammad, that perhaps he might be purified or be reminded, and the remembrance would benefit him? As for he who thinks himself without need, and these are these people who the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was busied with, to them you give attention, and it will not be upon you. There is no blame upon you if they are not purified, i.e., if they do not accept the message. But as for he who came to you striving for knowledge, while they fear Allah, from him you are distracted. So here is an example in the Quran where an individual who was blind was given a station and a rank that is loftier and above those who had their sensory perceptions intact. So here, Abdullah, he was given a level and a degree above those who disbelieved, and that was no doubt due to the faith that Abdullah ibn Maktoum had within his heart. And this is the virtue that Allah gave him over those who could see. And in addition to this, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when he would travel from Medina and he would leave Medina, he would leave Abdullah ibn Maktoum as the Amir, as the leader, the one in charge of Al-Medina. And as is known, he was made the Mu'adhin, the caller to prayer, in the prophetic masjid in Medina. As we see in the hadith, in the narration, where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said to the companions, do not be deceived by the call of prayer of Bilal. Rather, continue to eat and drink until you hear the call of prayer of Abdullah ibn Maktoum. And this was no doubt a virtue for him. And this is without any reference and without any consideration to the fact that he was blind and could not see. And in addition to this, another example is the example, Shaykhana Amr ibn Jamuh, هكذا?
Amr ibn Jamuh, نعم.
أثابكم الله. Amr ibn Jamuh, who was, he had a physical disability. But despite the fact that he had a physical disability, he went and he fought with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, until he was martyred. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, وشيخنا قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه رآه في الجنة.
نعم، قال لك أني أنظر إليك تمشي برجلك هذه صحيحة في الجنة.
ممتاز. أثابكم الله. And then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, it is as though I can see him walking correctly, like walking his impediment that he had had been rectified. It's as though I can see him walking upright and correctly in paradise. So we see, my brothers and sisters, that Islam is the greatest religion that gives rights and gives the best to those who have special needs. And when we look to the Quran and the verses of the Quran, it's imperative that we understand the context in which these disabilities and these things are being mentioned, and also the intent that Allah the Most High has behind mention of them. Otherwise, we run the risk of understanding them in an incorrect way, and as a result of that, not understanding the Quran properly and going astray. And we ask Allah for deliverance, and may He send peace and salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad and upon his family and companions. Athabakum Allah Shaykhana, we ask Allah the Most High to reward our Shaykh abundantly for this really important lecture, and for his efforts as well, and to increase him in knowledge and increase him in calling to Allah's religion. وفقكم الله شيخنا وبارك فيكم.
امين واياكم الله يسلم عليكم. سامحونا تعبناكم.
ان شاء الله.
الماده غير محضره وانما ارتجلناها ارتجالا.
ابدا شيخنا ابدا. وشيخنا ان شاء الله ارسل اليكم طلب لو سمحتم.
نعم ابشر ابشر.
وثابكم الله.
Again, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair.
Ameen wa iyyakum. I hope I have answered all the questions and clarified all the doubts.
Inshallah, yes. This is something which we definitely need to push and promote and get out there to not only the deaf community, but for everyone really, so they can have a better understanding when they read the Quran and may misunderstand it. Is to be explained by people of knowledge so they can get the correct understanding, which is vital really in understanding the religion correctly, and how to go about things, how to have the correct understanding of the religion. So yes, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair.
Blind and poor people are the inhabitants of my heart.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Yeah. Myself as well.
Barakallahu feekum. See you inshallah. Next week, inshallah, with Ramadan. I don't know what you're going to do, but inshallah we'll coordinate and see what it is.
Inshallah. The schedule's going to be up on the website Islam for Deaf. We're also going to be doing the Taraweeh in sign language. Inshallah. For every day of Ramadan, inshallah. So you can watch that live on islamfordeaf.co.uk. You can also visit Milton Keynes Masjid if you're local, or if you want to experience the Taraweeh in sign language for our deaf brothers and sisters. There will be segregated parts for the brothers and for the sisters, inshallah, as well as refreshments, inshallah. So that's Milton Keynes Masjid in Milton Keynes. The address is on the website islamfordeaf.co.uk. Jazakallah. We'll see you again next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Tom. Hopefully, very soon we say to you, Ramadan Mubarak.
Inshallah.